Peace, greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. I've just had the mic all the way up there. I forgot to turn the volume down on the cell phone. What's going on, family? I got the team on deck. Shout out to my brother Ali. Shout out to my brother Josh. Shout out to my brother Logic. I mean, we on deck. We ready to get it in tonight. Tonight we're gonna talk about. We're gonna briefly go into the Nick Cannon situation, right? And we're not touching on it in the same way that people are touching on it just to have commentary on it. We're touching on it so that we can show people that ownership is key. And we're going to get into some of what he said about reparations. We're going to get into piecemeal reparations that's going on in the States. We're going to look at something that Chuck Schumer is proposing. We're going to get into some things tonight. Where will the reparations money come from? You know, we've been doing a lot of battle on Twitter with white supremacists lately and racists, outright bigots that feel that their tax money shouldn't pay for our reparations. So we're gonna break that down tonight as well. So let's get right into it, family. Let's get right into it. All right. I think the first thing I want to do is let's get into Nick Cannon. He apologized. I'm reading from the Los Angeles Times. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen, but I'm just going to read the headline. Nick Cannon apologizes to Jewish community, keeps masked singer hosting gig. So, you know, he's a host on this show called The Masked Singer. I'm not going to get into the particulars. It says Nick Cannon has apologized again to the Jewish community after drawing sharp criticism this week for a podcast conversation with former Public Enemy rapper Richard Griffin, aka Professor Griff, and he has the support of at least one of his employers, Fox. That doesn't surprise me at all, right? If you know Fox and their connection to the right wing groups are largely racist. We have to be honest. It was they who were marching in Charlottesville, screaming, "The Jews will not replace us. The Jews will not replace us." So that part of it is not, you know, it's not out of the question, right? That Fox News would still support Nick Cannon. Plus, they're trying to appeal to the quote unquote black voting base. But what I want to do is I want to play Nick Cannon's video where he's interviewing Tariq Nasheed, because there's something that he says in this video that's very important in our push for reparations. Because one of the things that we're noticing is there's this attempt to water down the reparations discussion. And we have to jump in front of that. We have to jump in front of that. So I want to play this video. While I'm pulling it up, family, please click like on the video. Please share the video. Let the people know that we going in right now, because people need to hear this truth. They need to get a greater political education so that they will know moving forward who to listen to and who not to listen to, especially when it comes to this, our reparations fight. So let's get into this real quick. All right, this is from Nick Cannon's interview with Tariq Nasheed. And let's see what Nick Cannon says here when the subject of reparations comes up.
People. Now, when you say tangibles, are you talking reparations? Are you talking land?
Yeah. In the form of cash payments, in the form of land, but preferably cash, because
cash. Wait, yes. I'm going to disagree with you. Yes. I say land over cash. Cash ain't worth it.
Yes, but you can buy land with cash.
They give you crypto. Like we know the money. It's only fucking 3% of currency.
And they give you land at the goddamn bread tar pits. You sitting up there with dinosaur bones.
But land is yours. Look at what they did with the natives. You don't want no that money bullshit.
They give you put you on a desert and no water.
So you want
give me
money.
Land. I will get the land my damn self.
Even though money ain't worth shit. You know,
money is still worth enough to get land.
You know, it's centralized banking.
I understand that. I can use
it's
money.
Debt.
You want money I can still spend money. If I got a pile of money right now, I can go buy land.
Okay.
We can still buy land right now.
But imagine if they gave it into they get because what the however many trillions, what is it, 60 trillion?
Yeah.
All right, we can
like
stop it right there. Let's stop it right there. I want to pull up one more thing before I bring my bros in. I just have to share this with the people because I think that this is important for everyone to see. This is Nick Cannon's net worth. Nick Cannon's reported net worth is $30 million and his salary is $10 million. So how do you argue against reparations when you're already a multi-millionaire? You have a salary of $10 million and your worth is $30 million, while the middle black family is worth $17. And the further you move from the middle on down, it reaches a level of $0. So I'm going to bring the team on to discuss that. Brother Ali Bey, you came on first, so go in on that, brother. What do you feel about Nick Cannon's comments on reparations, that we shouldn't receive direct cash payments, we should only receive land?
Well, going into the comments about reparations, I will go back first to his problem with dealing with the whole anti-Semitism issue and then having to apologize for it. And what I think he has demonstrated, which we've been talking about, and you've heard Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore talk about it time and time again, is that the power of Black celebrity is not what Black America wants it to be. It's just not. And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of Black celebrities who are moving into spaces that they're not really prepared to be in, to have intelligent conversations about. And this particular dialogue that he was having with Tariq Nasheed, like the Professor Griff one, shows that he is not informed enough to have these types of conversations, particularly with reference to reparations and how that's going to affect the 40 million or whatever odd million it is of us ADOS people in this country. We talked about in one of the previous episodes about the issue of land versus cash payments, but like Professor Darity is saying and so many others, cash payment, and like even Dr. Logic has said in many occasions, we're in a capitalist society, and it makes all the sense in the world to start with capital, and repairing the damage has to do with repairing the generational disadvantage in terms of the wealth disparities that we've been forced to deal with as members of this society. So yeah, I just think that he's off base, like many of them are, and he's not qualified to have that dialogue.
Period. Brother Logic, what were your thoughts on that?
So I'm gonna echo a lot of the things Ali was saying, but ultimately, what I find to be extremely problematic is the irresponsible use of platforms in regards to Black entertainers. So he has this platform where he's in connection and direct connection to millions of audience of millions via his agency with everything he's done from Nickelodeon to film to Wildin' Out. What was that on? I think MTV or something. So he has tapped into a large audience, and when you have that type of traffic on your platform, you have to be held to a higher standard of responsibility because you're affecting a lot of people. So a lot of the stuff he said was just inaccurate. I mean, I believe in freedom of speech. Obviously, he has the right to say what he wants, but I also believe as a man, you should be responsible for the things that you do take liberty to say. So you should want to be right. You should want to be as right as you can when you come out and make a lot of claims and a lot of statements. You should be. I think there has, especially in regards to the reparations conversation, I think there's a lot of prerequisites that should be set because of the importance of the subject matter and its effect on the public opinion on the matter. It needs to be a lot of material that needs to be required to read and understand before you speak publicly about it. You know, so I think that he misspoke. He was not prepared to speak to the reparations conversation. So in regards to his whole position on cash payments versus money, I want to say first, it's not a cash payments versus money scenario. It's a where do we start, right? Because in ultimately, when we're dealing with reparative justice and restitution, we're going to look at all of these things are going to go into a pure reparations program. But we're talking about a starting point. So when, like I've said before, and Bob Johnson has also said, in a capitalistic society, if we're going to start making people equal, or we're going to start with repair, I want to start with what is the most important thing in society. Capital and access to capital is the most important thing in a capitalistic society. So start there with the loss, and we can definitely come up with a standardized metric on how to gauge how much capital should be given, right? So a lot of people say they can never pay us back for what they did to us during slavery. We understand that moralistically, and far as on a moral standpoint, no, you cannot repay us for the lost lives. You can't repay us for all the wickedness that you've done. But when we start talking in terms of economics, in regards to closing the racial wealth gap, there are very real numbers that we can use. There are very real attempts to a sincere approach to repairing that damage that can be taken. So I think people like Nick Cannon and other Black entertainers need to understand that when it comes to public policy and public politics and things of that nature, they should be really careful how they use their platforms. And like I said, there should be requirements for education before you speak publicly about something so important to our group.
Brother Josh.
Yeah, so I mean, I think y'all said a lot when it comes to that particular aspect of the conversation he was having, dealing with land versus cash payments. Can I talk about the other statement that really got him in trouble?
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that. I mean, I want to echo what you said about the waste of the platform that you have and not understanding the impact that you have. And it's interesting because in some kind of way, when we look at the situation and what happened, I see some similarities to the bird watching dude with the Karen with the bird watching, you know, because I see how hard that people were going to defend him after that situation was over. But then just to see him kind of not stand on his square, to kind of see him retreat and you know, give all kind of apologies that he was not trying to give at that moment when those things happen. And I'm just like, you know, that's not the hill you want to have to die on. You know, I don't know if y'all saw that the show that we did in the past. It was not too long ago. It was a show called Reparations is the hill we must die on. It is the only solution. But it's funny because Chance the Rapper, I don't know if y'all seen Chance the Rapper's Twitter. Go look at his Twitter. He did a tweet. It was just like reparations, yes or no. And then he did another tweet. And he was like, man, I'm really disappointed at these numbers. Now we can see why we're facing the issues we're facing in America. Then he had another tweet on there. And somebody was like, well, why are you disappointed? It's like, because, you know, those numbers indicate so many people disagree with reparations. And, you know, I think as a person that's been following the topic of reparations and, you know, been in this ADOS movement and fighting, we've seen where past numbers indicate a much different disparity of reparations in society. Like, okay, now it's 58 to 41. So that means probably a lot of the racist trolls and well, we can just say most of white America got wind of this post. When I looked at it the other day, it was like 69 to 31, you know, now 58 to 41. And I'm sure he's very disappointed. But it's funny because if you keep scrolling down and see his next tweets, it's a tweet where he says, when you get to the top of a hill, and oh there we go. See, we on it. We on it. Reparations is the hill. that our people must be willing to die on. But Chance had another tweet that says, man, when you get to the top of a hill and you realize you must die on that hill. And it's funny because right below that, we responded to that and says, we literally made a show called Reparations is the Hill We Must Die on. So as a celebrity, if they're going to come for you, make sure they come for you on this. Don't make them end you on something like what Nick Cannon got ended on, or what they tried to end Deshaun Jackson with, or what they tried. See, Stephen Jackson with the George Floyd situation, he was elevated. Like his voice got so much power. So I want to ask, why is he not using that power for reparations? I mean, does he not know? I mean, it's been elevated to the mainstream conversation. So that's my problem. I don't want to beat up no black celebrities, but I'm like, yo, you understand what is the most urgent and the most critical change that we can have, especially in this moment. And it is not just some police reform, it's reparations. And right. Just because you're good, just because your financial situation is, your life is not going to change, your next several generations may be taken care of. That's not the case for the vast majority of us. We've ran down the wealth data. If you don't know about the wealth data to understand our disparity, just go to ADOS101.com. That's highlighted there. You can go Google Dr. Sandy Darity and just Google. He did a recent TED Talks. I don't know if y'all seen that TED Talk. Man, it was a powerful short segment he had on there breaking down his case and his story and how he got to reparations being the answer. You know, he even was one that was kind of dismissive at first too, but then he started doing his research on the topic, and now he's the number one, advocate out here in probably in the one of the most prominent intellectuals or scholars, in favor for reparations. So I just want to say to Cannon, to all y'all celebrities, you may be watching this, or you may get word of this. Start using your platform for reparations and do not waste it on things that are inconsequential and will end you. If they're going to end you, make sure that reparations is the hill you must die on. Because guess what? That's the one that has the most data behind it. It has the most moral clout behind it. And you're going to have the most, intense people on the internet, ADOS. You're going to have the most strongest backing behind you on Twitter.
It's the most relevant.
Ask about us. Nobody wants these problems with us on Twitter. If you want to have somebody at your back, advocate for reparations.
Indeed.
Definitely. Before we move to the next point, I want to say this, right? I think that this Nick Cannon situation showed us that, and I'm going to frame this in light of what he said to Tariq Nasheed, that we don't need money. We don't need cash. We need land. Now that works in 1865, right? Between 1865 and 1900, because if they had done right by us, we would have produced our own cash. We would have branched off into many different industries. In fact, many of our inventions were stolen from us because we had no power. We had no power of ownership at all, because to the racists in the South, they owned and controlled everything that we did, whether we were free or not. So you don't have a platform. And so now you may make a statement that you think perhaps is truth, and yet you have to walk it back because you don't have your own platform. You realize that after it's all said and done, you'll never get a job around here again, kid. You know how that line goes in the movies? But let's look at some of the movies, like series that have been canceled. The Watchmen, Underground, The Get Down. There's a couple of them, right?
Oh, The Get Down.
The Get Down, right? Canceled. There's a series on Netflix called Money Heist. It's one of the best series I've ever seen, I have to be honest. But they only went one season, and Netflix picked them up. Netflix picked it up. They put their money behind it, and it became one of Netflix's #1 series of all time. And here we have, even with Nick Cannon worth $30 million, not being able to afford to put that capital into a media platform so that he would never have to worry about censorship or a job. In fact, he could be giving people jobs through his media platform. These shows that I just mentioned, Watchmen, Underground, The Get Down, there's a couple others that I can't think of right now.
Luke Cage.
I mean, these could have been picked up and shown on a Nick Cannon, Diddy, and some other media, Dr. Dre's media platform. And instead, we're still forced to be, even with $30 million, to be in a subservient position. We look at the billionaire in Byron Allen, and we see that he had to go fight Comcast at the Supreme Court because they were trying to box him out. His $1 billion was not even enough to go up against the mega billion and $trillion corporations. Reparations fixes this, and it might not fix it for us right at the moment, but if we get it now, 20 years from now, we have our own platforms, and we can't do that with land. So, I just had to add that.
And let me I like what you. Let me come in and say this, right? Backing up what you said, right? The understanding of what reparations actually is one of the more fundamental problems I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
So, or should I say, the lack of understanding of what a reparations program entails and what it actually is the more serious problem being expressed in the public right now. So, like, when we're talking about Nick Cannon, and what Abba just said perfectly, right, was communicating his vulnerability. So it doesn't matter his need and the way that we look at wealth and money, right? So his 30 million may look like a lot to impoverished group, to people
Right.
who don't have nothing. But in the grand scheme of things, he's nothing. And they show him that he's nothing anytime they want. We will shut you out, we'll close you out, and we'll do whatever we decide to do with you, because at the end of the day, you have no power there. And what reparation is a restoration of not just cash and resources, but ultimately access to power in this country that we should have had, that should have accumulated generation after generation from actually building the country. So we don't have any power position in industry, media, television, otherwise, due to being locked out and shut out for so many generations. So now a man can't even be a man in any space, even with his $30 million. He can't even come out full-throated and say what he feels in his heart without having to come back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean that," and yada, 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 yada. You know what I'm saying? They turned a man into a boy right before our eyes, even with his 30 million. So you have to understand
just
what
an apology.
really is.
It wasn't just an apology. That brother was talking about he feels ashamed. Like they really broke him, man. You know what I'm saying? Because normally you get apologies, with this brother talking about I feel ashamed, and it's terrible how they broke him.
It was disgusting.
Definitely impotent. That, I think that if you can sum it up in one word, impotence would be the best word. Okay, so let's move on to this Asheville, North Carolina reparations discussion, because we have to get into this. And reading Dr. Darity's book, From Here to Equality, so many things are becoming more clearer to me. And one of the things that he speaks about is this piecemeal reparations that can no longer be tolerated. I don't know what in the world I just did. Something wrong. Oh,
what you trying to do?
Oh, I clicked on the share the StreamYard instead of the ad. All right.
Okay.
So this is I'll just pull this article up, and I'm not gonna read this whole thing, of course, but what I will do is I'll just get into just some of this article, because people need to know what reparations is and what reparations isn't, and how we cannot let anyone come in and water down reparations. And everything that we're going to be discussing tonight, basically from Nick Cannon to Asheville to Chuck Schumer's new plan that we're going to get to in a minute, is going to be, in our opinion, an attempt to water down the reparations discussion. So let's look at this. Asheville City Council approves reparations plan as Providence explores idea. Now, so many people hit me in the inbox, especially from my hood, my neighborhood. Shout out to my hood, Hamels Projects, Far Rockaway, Queens, New York. I see y'all in the chat too. I gotta always shout my hood out. I can't help it. Now, you know, because they hear me going in on this reparations idea, and they hear the hope in it because we grew up a certain type of way. And if we didn't have to do that, I'm quite sure we would live full, productive lives as United States citizens. This would have been a utopia had we got the justice that we were supposed to get after we were freed from slavery. So it speaks about leaders in Asheville, North Carolina have taken the historic step to repair centuries of racial prejudice by unanimously voting to provide reparations. The Asheville City Council voted 7-0 on a resolution Tuesday night that formally apologized to its Black residents for the city's role in slavery, discriminatory housing practices, and other racist policies throughout its history. The measure also calls for a plan to provide reparations to its Black residents in the form of investments in their community, such as increasing minority home ownership. I've heard that so many times over the years. Increasing minority business ownership and career opportunities. So I'm going to come out of this, but let me read that part again before I come out of this. The measure also calls for a plan to provide reparations to its Black residents in the form of investments in their community, such as, and now they're quoting, this is in the quotations coming from the text of the measure, increased minority home ownership. Keyword is minority. The second quote, increasing minority business ownership and career opportunities. No. There's something else I wanted to read from this. Hold on. This is what I want to read from this real quick. Y'all, bookmark that word minority. We're going to get back to that. It says Asheville has a population of 92,870, 83% of which is white, according to the U.S. Census. Minorities, remember, minorities own roughly 9.7% of the town's 12,785 businesses, according to census data. Now, the thing about this term minority is that it is inclusive, it is intersectional, and it also includes white women. So when we're looking at this metric, right, this 9.7% of the town's 12,785 businesses are owned by minorities. This, you have to separate the Black people, right? Those who are descendants of American slavery from the other groups that may be there in North Carolina, whether it be Jamaicans, Haitians, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, white women, etc., etc., etc. This is called disaggregation. So once you disaggregate those numbers, you would probably see that that number precipitously drops from 9.7% to who knows how low of a number. And we have to come to a full understanding of that this is how you begin the process of watering down reparations. Brother Ali, what is your thoughts on this Asheville measure?
Well, it's interesting. When I first saw this article yesterday, I actually made a post about it on Facebook, talking about exactly what, kind of like just briefly talking about what you're talking about, and the fact that it's not reparations. And so you have a lot of you know, a lot of people who are trying to jump on the reparations train, and they're basically calling everything and anything reparations at this point. And they pretty much kind of state that in this particular resolution. As I know we're going to go into the resolution, but let me just read a little bit of what I said about the article that I saw and I put on Facebook. So I shared the screen. I don't know if you can see it. You know, it might be too small or whatever, but let me know if you can see it.
There it goes.
All right. So this is yesterday. I said, this is not reparations for the city's descendants of slavery and Jim Crow. This is a social-based maneuver for minorities, which is a term that can include any non-white males and can also include white women, and does nothing to close the intentionally created racial wealth gap. The American descendants of slavery are not the only people living in our neighborhoods, so these kinds of investments should not be called or even considered reparations for us. Pertinent part of this article reads, the unanimously passed resolution does not mandate direct payments. Instead, it will make investments in areas where Black residents face disparities. The resulting budgetary and programmatic priorities may include, but not be limited to, increasing minority home ownership and access to other affordable housing, and increasing minority business ownership and career opportunities, strategies to grow equity and generational wealth, closing the gaps in healthcare, education, employment, and pay, neighborhood safety and fairness within criminal justice. So reads the resolution. And so, as we're going to show as we get into the actual resolution itself, and as you mentioned already, this term minority, I have a few other terms that I have a problem with. First-time home buyers, small business owners, all of these kinds of terms are inclusive terms that could really be references to anybody: minorities, people of color, small business owners, first-time home buyers. We know that a lot of small businesses, where there are people who are like multi-millionaires that own these small business franchises, such as like McDonald's franchises and so forth. A lot of these small business owners were able to benefit off of the PPP aid that 95% of Black-owned businesses were locked out of. And that includes even people like Kanye West, who qualified as a small business owner, where he was able to get millions of dollars in aid to help his business stay afloat. But I guess, you know, in terms of his relationship with Trump, that worked for him. But most Black businesses, small business owners, were locked out of that particular aid. And so, you know, we get to see how this thing really, in so many levels, man, a lot of this stuff works against us. Y'all want to go into the actual resolution?
Yeah, brother Logic. Did you want to go into the resolution, or you wanted Josh to give his commentary first?
I mean, if he got something to say, yeah, because the resolution it's going to take a minute to go through that.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay, so if you can go ahead and share the screen. Man, I think my microphone's kind of cracking up a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Bear with me, but I'm going to try to get through this because it's important, right? And Abba was framing a lot of things in the article. And what I want, like, the beat of power is trying to get people to understand is how to understand certain things, right? And in order to really know, like we did another show saying that the devil is in the details, right? So if we're going to be looking at things and framing them politically and understanding what's affecting us politically, we have to be able to analyze things like this, resolutions. We broke down HR 40 a few weeks ago, and you have to be able to go and actually read the legislation. Stuff like this is made available to the public for a reason. We can't just have barbershop conversations about this, beauty shop conversations about this. We need to go and pull up this stuff, look at the details, and see what this is, because
Facts.
This lets you know, actually, when Abba was talking, it all kind of red flags should have came up. But when I actually go through this legislation, I'm gonna show you why this is so nefarious, and you can't call it nothing but actually wickedness and evil, if you want to be quite honest. All right. So bear with me tonight. We have to get it in. We have to teach. So it's going to be quantum lithium. I'm gonna read this. It's not that long. I'm gonna read this whole resolution. Resolution number 20. Resolution supporting community reparations for Black. Pay attention to these terms on how they're basing their what they're trying to do. This resolution is fortified in somebody's pain and in somebody's atrocity for Black Asheville, right? Whereas Black people have been unjustly enslaved, and whereas Black people have been unjustly segregated, and whereas Black people have been unjustly incarcerated, and whereas Black people have been denied housing through racist practices in the private realty market, including redlining, steering, blockbusting, denial of mortgages, and gentrification, and whereas Black people have been denied housing, displaced in inequitably housed by government housing policies that include discriminatory via federal housing administration practices, urban renewal, and like we're like, if you pay attention, like notice how they keep saying Black people, Black people, Black people. I think you kind of see how they're building this case. This case is being built upon the backs of Black folks. And they're talking about all of these injustices, right? But so this is basically what their resolution is based on, right? So you get that point. But the real problems start to come in when they start telling you what this is really about. The city council, so they built this whole entire case on the atrocities of Black folks. And y'all can go get this whole entire PDF, right? So the city council of the city of Asheville, 1, apologizes and makes amends for its participation in the sanctioning of the enslavement of Black people. That's fine. Okay, you can apologize. Apologizes and makes amends for its enforcement of segregation and its accompanying discriminatory practices. All right, that's still kind of okay, right? But let's keep reading. Apologizes and makes amends for carrying out an urban renewal program that destroyed multiple successful Black businesses. Make a mental note. Calls on other organizations and institutions in Asheville that have advanced and benefited from racial inequality to join the city in its apologies, and invites them to address racism within their own structures and programs, and to work with the city to more comprehensively address systemic racism. First and foremost, when you're doing reparations work, you don't frame and build your case on the backs of all this atrocity to a specific group. And then when you come out and start talking about what you're going to do, have all of this nice language and all of this discriminatory language built into the actual repair part. It says we're calling on. No, reparations demands certain things to happen. You have to demand, it sets a standard for the repair. So this is calling on the organization and institutions. We're making little calls in Asheville that have advanced and benefited from racial inequality, right? Inequity, right? To join the city as it apologizes and invites. So it's giving them the option to apologize for one, all right? And says it calls on the state of North Carolina and the federal government to initiate policy making and provide funding for reparations at the state and national levels. So Asheville has already admitted with this piece here that it doesn't really have what it takes to do what they're trying to do, because now they're bringing the state and the Fed in. Go ahead. What you got to say, Ali?
Now, I was saying that's what I was talking about earlier. Remember what I was saying on the phone, that there was a piece in the resolution that talks about looking for funding from the federal government.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? But to the point you're getting ready to make.
Yes. So why are you calling this reparations, right? If you are not even capable or don't even have the capacity to execute and exercise the repair that you're saying that this is going to do, because this is reparations, right? So let's keep reading, right? Because it gets more nefarious, right? So now they're calling on the state to help them out, having no real leverage to force the state to do anything because they're not the federal government, right? So we have to understand the relationship between the city of Asheville and the state of North Carolina. So now let's keep going. directs the city manager to establish a process within the next year to develop short, medium, and long-term recommendations to specifically address the creation of generational wealth and to boost economic mobility and opportunity in the Black community. Wow. Right? What is that? Like, listen to this. See, a lot of people don't understand what this means, right? So Asheville, after just saying and admitting that it's not capable and it does not have the monetary standing and the financial standing and the access to capital to actually carry this out, because it's saying it needs the state of North Carolina and the federal government to initiate policy making, then it's talking about generational wealth and boosting economic mobility. It doesn't even have the ability to do that. So you can't even say that, right? So let's move on to number 7. Fully supports its equity department, staff, and its works to encourage. Let me move down a little bit. To encourage the city manager to utilize their talents and forming policy and programs that will establish the creation of generational wealth and address reparations due in the Black community as mentioned above. Now get to this. Seeks to establish within the next year a new commission empowered to make short, medium, and long-term recommendations that will make significant progress toward repairing the damage caused by the public and private systemic racism. Other local government community organizations may also be invited. Why are we inviting people in a reparations program? The reparations program should be demanding certain actions and creating certain standards that have to be abided by. The task of the Community Reparations Commission is to issue a report in a timely manner for consideration by the city by the city and other participating community groups for incorporation into their respective short and long-term priorities and plans. Accountability for the achieving equity will be enforced in the appropriate offices. The report and the resulting budgetary and programmatic priorities may include, but not be limited to, increasing minority home ownership. Wait a minute. You see how they tried to slip that in there at the end?
The bait and switch was so
you see that?
up in there.
So they drowned you out, right? See, they know your attention span ain't all the way there. So they black you all the way down this resolution. And then that was right at the end. But not limited to increasing minority home ownership and access to other affordable housing, increasing minority business. Now everything's about, how do we get to the end being everything about minorities? Increasing
you know that part of the article that I read from ABC, they honed in on that part. Like this is a system that we're battling. The Bible calls it principalities and high places, right? It says we battle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and high places. And this principality is, in one sense, it's the media, and then in another sense, it's this whole other playing field that is politics. And these two things work hand in hand. If I'm not mistaken, the media is called the fifth column or something like that, right? So this is, I mean, yeah, go ahead, Brother Josh.
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I want to bring up a little piece of data real quick. Yeah, let me know when y'all can see my screen.
Yeah, you up, brother?
Okay, yeah. So this is the breakdown of Asheville, North Carolina. When you're looking at diversity, says Asheville's home to a population of 89.3 thousand. I think this is as of 2017 data. 95.8% of citizens as of 2007, 7% of Asheville residents were born outside the country. So there's 7% immigrants. In 2017, there were 6.54 times more white residents in Asheville than any other race or ethnicity. There were 10,000 Black or African American non-Hispanic and 4.4 white Hispanic residents, and the second and third most common ethnic groups. All right, so I just wanted to show, the breakdown racially of Asheville. I believe it's 83% white, 11% black, and the rest is everybody else. As far as where did I go? I just had it here. Citizenship. Hold on, moving too fast.
You just scroll past it. Citizenship.
Yeah, here we go. Right here, global diversity. So the most of the immigrants that they have there from Mexico, India, and Honduras. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit of data. It's not going to be a grift by black immigrants, because it doesn't look like Asheville has a lot of black immigrants.
Okay.
But this is the thing that I think people don't always think about when you think of diversity, or when you think about using the term minorities. It also includes white women. So if you got 83% of the population, probably 40 something percent of that is going to be, or 50% of that is going to be white women. And we know that they qualify as minorities. Now, are they going to be able to have a way to partake in this? What I want to say is, I don't see how I can unshare my screen or stop the share. Can you stop the share?
Yeah, I can remove it.
Yeah, stop it. All right, cool. Yeah, what I wanted to just say is, like, you know, this should not be called reparations.
Not at all.
Part of something that is, like, if we want to call it some type of initiative to fix some disparities there, if we want to, that's fine. I'm down with that. Like Yvette Carnell said on her show last night. That's cool. You know, if you want to do some type of class-based stuff, or some type of, you know, fix all equality stuff, and you just you want to do some fix blackness stuff, right? That's cool. But you can't do that without reparations. Like, to call it reparations, you have to be closing the racial wealth gap. Well, that's what reparations is about. You trying to repair the chief damage that was done to our people is manifested today as the racial wealth gap, where there's a huge gap of wealth. Well, if you close the racial wealth gap at a mean, that should be a minimum baseline of any reparations program. And anything other than that, you shouldn't call it reparations. What we really need to have, and what we really need to be discussing on the state and local level, is some type of reconstruction of the state government, of the all the inequities through the states and through the municipalities. Like, we want to talk about fixing the disparities in education and housing and environmental injustice. We're talking about all in law enforcement, all of these things, but especially the political aspect of it, because we know a lot of times these governments were set up in place where, at a time where, and they would be informed at a time, you can read the language in some of the formation of these state constitutions, where it was made just explicitly to target us, to lock us out, to keep us oppressed. And it was white supremacists at its core. So if we want to do something, that's what that needs to be about. And also, I want to say, I hope those who are making decisions are going to represent the people who are going, I hope those people who are in those positions of making the decisions on this commission are going to look like the people that are going to be benefiting, they're supposed to be benefiting from the program. In other words, it need to be us on there. It doesn't need to be a panel full of, you know, the 83% who may be looking for an opportunity to grip and just have some type of good press. That's not what we need in this moment. But I think we were trying to talk about how this needs to be, or if you want to implement this across the country, it could become problematic, because when we try to bring the argument for reparations on the federal level, which is really the only conversation you have when you talk about reparations, because the state cannot issue its own currency. Asheville cannot issue its own currency. So how can they run reparations? They can't. They don't have the financial capabilities to do that.
Hey, what Frank Lucas told Nicky Barnes in that movie? You could call it dog. Just don't call it blue magic. Look, just don't call this reparations, because that's not reparations.
Yes.
That's not reparations.
Can I say something though? Because what Josh said was powerful, and I hope everybody caught that, right? What they're doing is really trying to use the ADOS reparations oxygen to fuel the political fires in their localities. That is a crime. That is that's a crime. You should not do that, because understand the limitations that Josh just spoke to are already disqualifying these localities and states from being able to even exercise reparations in the way that it needs to be done. They can't even construct a pure reparations program. This is piecemeal. What they're doing is regular politics. See, what they want to do is try to use some other type of energy to motivate and propel their own political and pre-existing political agendas to solve their problems in their localities and their states. Y'all just need to do y'all politics. Don't try to use reparations to fuel your fires. Don't try to use reparations as fodder, because that is disrespectful. I don't know if it's intentional, but that you are disrespecting a legacy, and our ancestors, people have died. Like, this thing is real. Don't use reparations just to try to get anything done now, because it's become a national hot topic and it's on the lips of everybody. So now every local and state politician will say, hey, this can be reparations. This can be reparations. No, it don't work like that.
And remember, we were talking earlier, they used in that resolution, they used the history of our people, right, to reel everybody in. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, you went through this, you went through that, you went through that. So let's give all of these things to all of these minorities. Like, who is that? And then remember, we were talking earlier, the people that stuff might have even happened to, who were living in that city. I don't know if you mentioned this, Josh.
Yeah.
Their descendants probably not even there anymore, because the history is that some of those people got ran out of the city.
Yeah, in the 50s and 60s, they got run out of there. They got run out of the city.
Exactly. So now they're going to try. So this is how it even makes more. It's absolute nonsense from start to finish. But now they're saying they're going to repair a people that are not even standing in the shoes of those who were harmed. You just going to read. This is like we're repairing a geographic location. We're not repairing a specific group of people. We're just going to repair this place, and whoever's there can benefit.
It may be. I mean, the people there probably are standing in the shoes, but there's a large chunk of the people that are not there that should be receiving some type of benefits of reparations. That's why I'm saying you can't call it reparations. You know, another thing I don't think anybody mentioned was, you remember that young lady, Keeley, Rita, you know what I'm talking about, out of St. Petersburg, Florida, and she was running for mayor, or
yes, I remember her. Yeah, I follow her campaign well.
Congress, or so, I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember her.
I appreciated her campaign, but now, you know, looking back at it, she was pushing reparations. Like that was what she was talking about. That was a language in her campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we look back at it, like, what I want people to have the conversation about reparations, if you're going to have it at the local level. Earlier in that resolution, they said they were calling upon the state, they were calling upon the national government. Just use that energy to call upon the national government to do reparations.
That's
and
exactly.
Use that language to call upon the state to fix the problems that the state can fix. You know, the state cannot issue its currency, so it cannot do reparations. It cannot close the racial wealth gap. At the mean, if you close the racial wealth gap at the mean, it's going to be about taking Black families and bringing up about $800,000 in net worth. If you want to close the gap at the mean, it's going to take like $800,000 to $900,000 in changing the mean net worth of Black America. And that's when we talk on Black America, we're talking about ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, those that qualify.
Let me say, we're ending the stream on Facebook, family. Come over to the YouTube channel. Check out the rest of the. We're trying to build our traffic on YouTube. I'm glad that we have the traffic on Facebook and the way that we have it, but we get a lot of views on Facebook. But we're trying to get those views over on our YouTube channel. So everybody that's watching on Facebook, I put the link in the comment section on the live feed for the Facebook channel. Come on over to the YouTube channel and finish watching the rest of the show.
Yeah,
I want to just add one more thing to what I'm saying, and because I don't want people to twist this the wrong way. What I believe what we're saying is we should support this type of policy. We should push for change in the locality. Like, we're not trying to diminish anybody who is trying to use their, make a change for our people in your local area within the city. So support this, but it should be not using the language of reparations. That's what we're saying.
And let me read something from Darity to really talk about why. If you haven't got From Here to Equality, this is a absolute must. This is like a prerequisite to really be able to like articulate the reparations conversation in a way that can't really be refuted and ultimately makes the most sense, right? So Darity says on this is page 322. Darity says the invoice for reparations must go to the nation's government. The U.S. government, as the federal authority, bears responsibility for sanctioning, maintaining, and enabling slavery, legal segregation, and continued racial inequality. Specifically, the invoice should go directly to the U.S. Congress, the legislative branch of the national government, right? Understand, the federal government is the boss. So what y'all trying to do when you do these local and state quote unquote reparations pushes is you trying to go after the workers for what the boss is ultimately responsible for, right? So the boss is in charge. The federal government is the boss. And we need to file that invoice with not the workers, the boss.
And that reminds me of Dr. King. He said, I believe this was the I Have a Dream speech, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it is. He says, in a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. We're speaking about that invoice, right? It says, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. And that is first and foremost powerful. I mean, y'all know.
Where was that from again?
I'll just close it out too. That was from the I Have a Dream speech, because when he was reading that, it made me think about it, and I could see if I could pull it up again. But
let me just add real quick a tweet that Darity made about that Asheville, North Carolina reparations resolution. Darity says this on Twitter: there's a tendency for a number of activist organizations to confuse ending a harm with compensation for a harm. Compensation for a harm is reparative justice. Ending the harm, while essential, is not. When Black Lives Matter calls for an end to anti-Black police violence, they're calling for prevention of a harm, but not for remediation for the harm. It's the equivalent of what Malcolm X described as pulling out the knife, but reparations are required for healing the wound. There's too much imprecision over the use of the term reparations, so that it gets deployed in scattershot fashion to cover everything from police reform to local community development projects. Pure reparations eliminates racial wealth differences. That's from Dr. Darity.
Hey y'all, I'm gonna ask y'all to go ahead and send some make sure y'all subscribe, hit that like button, share, and donate. donate so we can get the ability to drop a bomb when something like
Get those cool.
drop the bomb button on there.
Definitely. All right, I want to bring up this new plan, segueing from Zarity's eloquent breakdown of this piecemeal reparations, and even what Yvette Carnell has been saying, and Antonio Moore, about how people are trying to get in front of this reparations discussion, right? So let's go to this real quick, right? Chuck Schumer, Senate Democrat out of New York. It says he unveils $350 billion Economic Justice Act to fight systemic racism. And the subtitle reads, Senate Democrats want money invested in minority and underserved communities hardest hit by COVID-19 crisis. Now, this is Fox News. I thought that line, Senate Democrats, with all of the talk that the particularly Black Republicans, I call them fake Black conservatives, are running around saying that Trump is investing in communities with the opportunity zones, et cetera, et cetera. I just thought it was funny that they used that term, Senate Democrats, and then say want money invested in minority and underserved communities hardest hit by COVID-19 crisis. It was something that I had on here that I wanted to pull up, but I really cannot remember at this point.
I have a breakdown if you want to hear it on how they plan on spending the money.
Oh man, that'll be perfect.
Particular thing. Hold on, let me share it so we can look at it.
All right, cool. And while you're saying that, let me just say that this is another way. If you take $350 billion and you say, well, we just invested in minority communities. We just approved this $350 billion. They don't need reparations. So what wind up happening is they come to the neighborhoods, these housing projects, and they resod the grass. They plant nice flower gardens. They change out the old gates, right? They pressure wash the graffiti off of the bricks. They even replace some of the facing of the buildings, right? New facade. It reminds me of another biblical verse. I know, like, that brother Muslim, why you always quoting the Bible? I quote everything. I read it all. And Jesus speaks to the Pharisees and the makers of the law. I may be citing that term wrong, but he says something to the effect. Matter of fact, I have it. Bear with me. He says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. Now, this is what happens in the projects when they do these investments and these revitalization programs. Nothing changes for the conditions of the people in these places. Everything looks clean on the outside, whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, well, it's full of dead men's bones and everything unclean, and that's because we've been placed at the bottom economically in the United States of America. So when it says, woe to you, teachers of the law, well, that's our politicians today, and Pharisees, our preachers and pastors, the ones that will side with the federal government to get the subsidies to rock the people back to sleep, and half of the people in the neighborhoods ain't listening to the pastor, no way. So this is how they bring these measures and then say, look, we did this and we gave y'all that, so y'all don't need this. All the while, our economic position in this nation is on a steady decline downward. So we have to jump in front of that. That's what this show is for. That's what Be the Power is for. That's why you have brothers, the elder Dr. Darity, who put out that book, From Here to Equality. It breaks down reparations. It gives you the history. I urge you all, everybody listening, to get that book. Watch Yvette Carnell's show on Breaking Brown YouTube channel. Watch brother Antonio Moore's show on Tone Talks. This is where the rubber meets the road, period. And we are gonna lead this fight. We're not letting nobody get in front of us. We're gonna do everything to elbow ourselves inside of all of these different spaces and make sure that these people do not do us dirty anymore. Period.
That's right.
Real quick before Ali pulls his thing up. So this is why what Abba just explained was so powerful. And from here to equality, it tells you this is why reparation uncompromisingly has to be centered around closing the racial wealth gap. Putting up siding and stuff and doing landscaping in the projects and doing inclusionary politics for everybody does not close the racial wealth gap for the people who are standing in the shoes of those who died building the country. That's what we're talking about, the descendants of American slaves. So that's what we're talking about. The people who are standing in the shoes of the people who actually built the country. And so somebody real quick said that minority means everybody. Well, historically, minority has benefited white women. So technically, the most. So technically, minority is a code word for white women.
Yeah, connotatively, we may think it means non-white people. But now, not only is it code for white women, it's a code for gay men too.
Yes.
Yeah. And remember, one of my good buddies was a city planner here in New York City, and he talked about the set-asides for minorities and how a lot of those set-asides were going to white women who then in turn turned those contracts and things over to their white husbands. So the white husbands benefit from minority set-asides. So let me just read this.
Ain't that something?
They got money. Hold on, they got money already, right? They already got bread. The white women go and get qualified for programs set aside for minorities that our people get locked out of, get the money in the forms of contracts, etc., and then just pass it along to their husband. Like, this is what you call wealth, and this is how they redistribute wealth, and it's been going on since after slavery. It's been going on.
So just to put that in context, we're talking about Mackenzie Bezos. Yeah, we're talking about Mackenzie Bezos is included in minorities.
That's right. No matter how much wealth she has, because she's a white woman, she's a minority, and she can potentially benefit off any program centered around minority targeting.
Which means in turn her husband can benefit too. If she
you're making too much sense now, guys. Come on.
So this particular article is from Newsweek dealing with the Democrats' $350 billion plan to fight systemic racism. And this, again, is a camelback on the whole reparations demand that we see springing up around the country now. So here's how the funds for communities of color will be broken down for each of the bill's 10 components. Child care. Remember, we talked about that the descendants of slavery are not the only people living in our communities. Like I'm in Harlem, right? So here in Harlem, there are Latino immigrants. There are European Americans who are living here now, all sorts of European Americans, because Harlem has been heavily gentrified. You understand what I'm saying? That, you know, you got Asians who own certain stores. You got the whites who own certain stores, your gas stations, and so forth. But in any case, child care. So there are a lot of people living in our communities who this child care would benefit, this $50 billion. Community health care access. We're not the only people in our community, so that $40 billion is going to be accessible in terms of health care. Is going to be accessible for whoever's living in our community. Job training, right? So they're going to spend $25 billion on job training for at-risk youth. There are a lot of people that can be considered at risk in our communities, right? It's not just the descendants of slavery, even though this is all being billed and styled as if it's, you know, something to fix the problems. and the conditions that came to us by way of slavery and Jim Crow. But here we have job training for at-risk youth in development, 25 billion. Aid for small businesses, right? And in Harlem, the majority of the businesses are owned by people who are not black, let alone ADOS black, but just not black, period.
In Harlem.
You know what I mean? In Harlem. Your supermarkets, your gas stations that are in Harlem, the corner stores, or we call them bodegas or whatever, they either Latino or Middle Eastern owned. You know, the nail salons are Asian, the hair supply stores, beauty supply stores are Asian, your laundromats usually are Asian, or or something. So at the end of the day, even like the restaurants, most of the restaurants are not black owned. Some are, but most are not. So you got modern infrastructure, including high-speed internet in schools. Tax credit for new homeowners, right? New homeowners is anybody. Anybody can be a new homeowner. That's not an ADOS thing. That's an anybody thing. 40 billion or up to 15,000 per family. Tax credit for renters. There are a lot of European Americans who are renters in Harlem now because it's heavily gentrified. A lot of new constructions have gone up. They're here. Low income housing, 25 billion for renters, 5 billion for low income. That's anybody. Expand Medicaid. ADOS are not the only people using Medicaid. Not at all. Improve maternal mortality, 50 billion. Divert more federal funds to disadvantaged communities, right? That could be Latinos, that could be poor Asians, that could be poor Jewish people. And I'm gonna tell you something, man. There's some Jewish people who have been taking advantage of the welfare opportunities of the government. You know what I'm saying?
That was big news a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but y'all could go in. I just wanted to read those pieces off.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to say, first off, I want to say this, right? This is just kind of, it seems like to me, reading this is just like the last thing in Asheville. It's what they should be doing anyway. You know, it's like, this is just something that's supposed to be able to give us, to keep us from, having to scrap and cut and scratch just to survive. This is survival type stuff, because with the impact of COVID, what's going to happen now and moving forward, that's baseline stuff that we're going to need to be able to not just fall all the way 100% prey to lack of wealth and lack of access to capital, and just falling prey to capitalism, because when these landlords and all these bill collectors come in and try to come in like vultures and come in like piranhas and eat us all up, and we don't have jobs, we don't have money, we don't have set asides or anything, like it's just something that's going to be needed. And it's not just needed for us, it's going to be needed for a lot of people. I don't like how it's framed as being to fight systemic racism, because then you bring in the legacy of the system that was created for racism. And the system that was created wasn't racism for people that got here 10, 15, 20 years ago. That system was already solidified decades before that. That system was already solidified decades before that. The neighborhoods were already segregated at that time. So when you talk about fighting systemic racism, it's going to be, if you want to fight it, you have to undo it. You have to undo it and you have to repair it. So what that $350 billion, look, that's supposed to be a down payment on business right there. If you need to study it, if you need to study reparations to do HR 40, like the brother Antonio Moore already suggested, give us 250, 500 billion down on it. If you want to say 350 billion, okay, cool. 350 billion, run that right now as a down payment, then go study reparations. That's what you need to do. And I don't want to hear anything about, that's money that's feasible in the budget. That's what are you're still running around with the myth that we need to take that out of the federal budget, where's that money coming from? It's not coming from taxpayer funded money like the state or the city. That's not how this is working. So
Can I jump in real quick?
go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's a comment that has to be spoken to before we allow it to escape us, right? So can you, Naheem, can you pull up Dr. Lely's comment, right?
Mhm.
It says, how is it restorative when you take a wealthy Black and give them more money? I don't agree with them if they think that way, and neither will Congress. And then we go back to and then highlight this next comment, right? Because I want to talk to them at the same time. It says restorative justice is the operative idea, which is restorative by giving, what is restorative? By giving LeBron and Oprah cash payments. I want to talk to this, right? Because this is by somehow assuming that because these people were able to be successful in today's economy, that their families weren't damaged and that they wouldn't even be that much more successful, or that their road to success would not have been so hard had they not had the generational wealth transfers that their family could have acquired during the time where they were being oppressed. So we're not looking, so this is what we're doing. We're looking at people who have been heroes in American society by being able to overcome all of the obstacles. So because we're able to overcome through our ability to be athletic and compete in entertainment and sports and do things like that, because that has been the only avenue really we've been locked into to acquire that type of wealth. Oprah is in entertainment. LeBron is in sports. But had their family been able to access wealth, and had they not been locked out of access to capital and been able to actually acquire the value from their own family sweat equity that they poured into this country by building it and being the actual currency and the actual value that America had, Oprah might not have had to be, I mean, she could have been anything. She could have been Chief Justice Oprah. LeBron might not have had to play basketball. He probably could have been a senator or whatever, industrial mogul LeBron James.
Right.
But now what we have is a situation where those have been our only avenues because of the oppressive politics, because of Reconstruction being overthrown, because we've been locked out through policy, through federal sanctioned policy, being locked out to access the capital and wealth and being able to, and well over a century of everyone else being able to capitalize off the value of our own sweat equity and the value of our bones. So we as a family couldn't even benefit off the value of our own family. But then you want to say Oprah, because she was able to make it. And I'm not even a fan of Oprah. I'm not going to let her be the excuse to why other people who are able to be successful don't deserve reparations, because they somehow were so magnificent that they were able to come up in a country that did everything they could to destroy their ability to upwardly move, to have an uptick in wealth, and to have any type of mobility towards economic power. And because they were able to make it a little bit, that they don't deserve reparations for what happened to their family, I say no. We can't allow that.
Right?
We're all trying to jump in on this. I'm gonna be brief.
Go ahead, bro.
I think that based on what she said, I think that those wealthy individuals that are ADOS should forego the cash payment aspect of it if they don't need it. That's my response to it. Like if I'm rich already, if I'm Nick Cannon with $30 million, I want that my reparations payment redirected into something else that, you know, and I guess that this is something that the top 10% of the wealthy in our families, in our group as ADOS can do. That's what I would do if I was wealthy. I wouldn't say I didn't deserve it. I deserve it. I deserve it. My family went through everything. I don't care what.
We are standing in the shoes of our ancestors. And just because Oprah is standing in red bottoms, don't make her less deserving of what happened to her family. I don't care.
Right.
See, we're not economists, right? But Dr. Lely seems to be very intelligent and very economically inclined. So if you just go read From Here to Equality by Dr. Sandy Darity, one of the leading economists in this reparations conversation from the University of Duke, he answers all those questions, right? So we're not just basing this off of some emotional position. This is rooted in data. It's logically explained, and it's all connected, right? So I'm gonna leave that with that.
Yeah.
Right, so
Go ahead, Ali. Go ahead, Ali.
I lost my point because
All right.
some
All
other
right.
stuff is going
I
on.
just-
So
Yeah, so I want to say to her, I mean, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, I was watching Dr. Darity. He had a TED Talk, and it's on the TED Talk website. And somebody in the TED Talk audience asked that same question that you asked, and he was basically saying that, and it's what we had already talked about in the chat before. That I mean, people who the reparations is a debt owed. It's not. We're just using close the racial wealth gap because that's the most that's the most tangible thing that we can see as a representation of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. You know, that's kind of what we're using as a baseline. Really, we're owed way more than that. Like in his book, he outlines how some people have made calculations that are over $100 trillion. You know. And then even with that, you can say that that's even not enough, considering, because that's just doing like the calculations based on some kind of work that was done or some kind of wealth that was owed or accumulated that we are locked out of. But that's not including the damages that were done. Like when you injure me, you're not just compensating me for my labor or the time or the wealth that was accumulated. We also compensated me for damage that was done to me, like emotionally, spiritually, through the generations. That's damages that have to be included. So we could say it should be way even more than 100 trillion. But we're using bet on now. So what we're using, the racial wealth gap, is just a baseline. That's not saying that you have to qualify by being at a certain wealth level or you're disqualified by being at a certain wealth level. And so what those individuals can do is, if they don't want to accept the money, they can just give it away. You know, they can.
But not only that, Josh, right? If you understand that when we're talking about closing the racial wealth gap, we're talking about closing it at all levels, right?
Right.
So
one more thing, bro.
Yeah,
I just want to add, when Japanese Americans were getting their reparations, they didn't look and say, well, hey, if you're a rich Japanese American, you can't get no reparations. They didn't say that. So that's what we have to look at. It's fine if we have some wealthy people. They achieved. They were lifted up. Whatever. If they got it selling cocaine, I don't care. Their ancestors paid the price, and they stand in those shoes, and they're supposed to get it. And nobody can have any type of moral sound argument as the reason why they shouldn't get it.
right, people want to pocket police our folks for whatever reason, and there's no need to. You don't do that to anybody else. Nobody pocket polices any other group except us. Everybody's worrying about what's in our pockets, what we're gonna spend the money on, where's the money gonna come from. Nobody else has to go through that except for us. You know. And go ahead, bro.
Yeah, no, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just gonna say the point that Dr. Logic was making was what I forgot. What I was trying to say was that, you know, even though Oprah may be a billionaire, LeBron James may be close to one. Those people, particularly the ones that are billionaires, are at the bottom of that particular barrel. It's not like the 5 or 6 black billionaires that we have is somewhere high up on that list. They're at the bottom of the list. So we could, you know what I'm saying? We could just dead that, man. At the end of the day, when you're talking about closing the wealth gap, we're talking about in every area. And we should not be, to your point again, Dr. Logic, we shouldn't be confined to being America's court justice in order to have to make money, because that's what we've had to do for the past 100 years or so or more, is to be the freaking entertainment for the United States of America and the rest of the world, just to try to come up.
Yeah, so you understand, being poor is not a prerequisite for qualifying for a reparations program. It's being tied into the lineage that connects you to the specific harms and atrocities of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, black codes, and everything of the like. Right? If you're connected to that legacy, we know you did not get what you deserved and what your family was owed. Plain and simple. So at the same time, you have to look at the kind of conditions Oprah and LeBron were forced to live in before they reached superstardom. These people came from poverty and they might not have been there. So there's punitive damages even still, that because when they reached a certain age that they were able to access certain amounts of wealth, but their mother and their fathers and their grandfathers were still weighed down by the avalanche of disadvantage that have been passed down from generation to generation.
Definitely. All right, let's get into the next stage of where we are right now, man. We are in a new phase of Reconstruction, family. And there's so many elements and so many signs and markers that we can look to from yesteryear and compare them to today and show that we are in fact in what some may call a third phase of Reconstruction. So I want to pull this article up because I think it captures that, right? Because Reconstruction was when you look at the sovereign citizen movement that many of the Moors have picked up, and y'all have heard us go at on this show. Those that have been following my channel, y'all know I've been going at them guys for years, at least 10 years. And a lot of their ideas and arguments come from the sovereign citizen movement. The sovereign citizen movement sprang from the Southern rebels, whom are called Confederates in the historical record, who were mad that they lost the war. And they rewrote history. Y'all hear us mention this book that we're reading all the time on this show called The Bloody Shirt. And while they physically lost the war to the Union Army, they won the intellectual war that came afterwards. They were able to rewrite the narrative, revise history, and make it appear as if anything done good for us was bad because we're not their parents and we shouldn't be able to help them put their boots on and put their pants on, right? Because they have this paternalistic nature about them when it comes to ADOS. And then on the flip side of that, they are the main people that will tell you you're not going to do anything with the money anyway, except do this. And these are things that we went over since we've been doing this show. But I just wanted to kind of add that in there as I bring this up, because I think that this article shows us something in relation to what I'm speaking on. It says anti-maskers chanting USA attack Black pastor seeking reparations for Tulsa race massacre. This is important. A group of anti-mask protesters attacked a Black pastor during his weekly demonstration seeking reparations for the 1921 Tulsa race massacre. Reverend, let me blow this up a little bit. Hold on. Let me blow this up. Reverend Robert Turner, pastor of Vernon AME Church, has protested outside City Hall each Wednesday since September 2018. But this week, his demonstration was disrupted by a group intending to protest Tulsa's newly enacted mask mandate, reported Tulsa World. He said, "My very presence was the catalyst for an onslaught of anger and hate from my fellow children of God," Turner told media outlets in a statement. He said, "Today, people shouted USA at us as though it was an attack, as though the United States was no place for Black men seeking justice," the pastor added. Turner shared a video of the encounter that shows anti-mask protesters, many of them wearing clothing that shows support for President Donald Trump, chanting USA to drown out the pastor's call for reparations over a megaphone. And one man dangles a dollar bill to mock him. "How much do you want?" the man says. A white woman positions herself directly in front of the pastor and jabs a finger at him and leans in without a mask to yell at him. "You are a racist," the woman shouts. "You are a racist." The pastor urges the mostly white demonstrators to wear a face mask as he is during the encounter. And one woman reacts strongly. "Mark of the beast," she shouts. "Mark of the beast. No face masks in heaven. No face masks in heaven." And I'm going to end it there. I thought that article was vital in opening up the discussion about where we are in this new phase of Reconstruction, because this is the very thing that was happening when you read a book like The Bloody Shirt, and it details what was going on with our people in the South. It's the same language. It is the same vitriol. It is the same hatred. And when someone is standing there dangling a dollar saying, how much do you want? It's like the battles that we've been having on Twitter over the past couple of days on Chance the Rapper's post, on his tweet about reparations. We was killing them guys. We didn't let up on them one bit. We ain't let up on any of them. We beat them back. We beat a bunch of racists back on Twitter. But they were saying things like, my tax money is not going to pay for reparations. Y'all should go get a job and do all of these. It's all racism, And we're going to get to the money element about taxes and all that. But I wanted to frame this portion of the discussion with that article, because the same things that were happening in Reconstruction in that day is happening with this new era of Reconstruction and Civil Rights 2.0, with the difference being we a whole different group of men here now. Reparations is a hill that we are willing to die on. Like we are not our ancestors, as one of those memes say. We will F you up.
Yeah. So, and like speaking to this new it's a new Reconstruction is absolutely, if you pay attention, necessary, and what we're kind of experiencing right now. We're seeing all of the behavior and all of the telltale signs of a Reconstruction era. People are tearing down monuments. You see that happening, rioting, and reparations is the national discussion right now. There's no hotter topic. People can pretend. There's no hotter topic and no more important issue than reparations right now. So understand. What'd you say, Josh?
Say, just ask Erykah Badu.
Oh yeah. Oh wow, you tripping. So if you look at it, right, just look at the importance of this moment right now. The first Reconstruction, right, was overthrown. Reconstruction was overthrown. It did not fail. It was overthrown in a masterful way by Southern Democrats and ex-planters and ex-rebels and things of that nature. And if you go through the catalog, we went in on the whole overthrowing of the first Reconstruction a few series back. And I implore y'all to go look at that. It was very good. But now, so then we go to another time in history. After getting left out of that, after getting left out of the Homestead Act, when America was giving away millions and millions of acres and land, after they forced us into homelessness, and they forced us in the first Reconstruction, they forced us in to poverty and unemployment, right? 4 million of us by many accounts, including the congressional records say that, the national census say it was 4 million, right? So they forced 4 million of our family into poverty, into homelessness, into into nothingness, right? Thinking that we were going to be an extinct group. We was endangered, but we never became extinct, right? So we move fast forward. We get to another time where America could have included us in a program that could have kind of closed that gap and kind of put us in and set us in a new path in America when we get to the New Deal in 1930, after the economic collapse and the stock market collapse in 1929 and in 1930, we have FDR come through. They have the New Deal. They create all of these different federal agencies. They start giving out land again. They start appropriating. They create a whole new category of jobs called city works and things like that. They start building highways. They have laboring going on, and unions are popping up. All kind of things are happening. You have the infamous program where they was creating this middle class through one of the number one asset building tools, which is home ownership. So you had the FHA come through, almost completely exclude Black folks out of this program and start backing the poor white folks and create a whole new class of Americans called the middle class. And they totally left us out. If you look at the New Deal, it's a second reconstruction of America. America almost failed and died in 1929. And that New Deal that America made with white America, because they didn't make it with us, we was left out of that deal. It repaired America, and it was a Reconstruction era. It was a second Reconstruction era, and we was left out of it. So what we're seeing now with this reparations push that only the federal government can cash in, far as monetary value and extensive widespreading program value as well, only can be done by the federal government through an act of Congress is what we're talking about. We're focusing on congressional action. Understand? Because congressional action is what got all this other stuff done. If you go do the history, you'll see it was an act of Congress that got the subsidies and gave millions of acres of lands to poor white folks. It was an act of Congress that gave them the subsidies to mechanize and to farm the land. It was an act of Congress that created all of the New Deal programs and all of that, right? So when we understand what a pure reparations program will entail in detail, we're talking about another reconstruction. This will be a reconstruction. You will be opening up the window and opening up the door for America to do the right thing again and create a country that is living by its word of liberty and justice for all, and understand that the requirements of a pure reparations program is spelled out in From Here to Equality, and it has 3 branches, 3 legs, and the acronym is ARC. We have to have acknowledgement, we have to have redress, and we must have closure. And after we get closure, there will be no need for race-based arguments and policies if we continue in that good faith path, in that direction. But until we have closure, people keep on saying, well, that happened so long ago, and that happened a long time ago, and that's old, but we never fixed it. So until we fix it, we have to keep talking about it, and we have to keep fighting for it to get repaired and to get fixed. Once America fixes what they broke, then we can talk about something else.
Definitely. Anybody want to add on to that?
Ali, you're on mute. I can't hear you, bro.
Did y'all want to go into did you want to like have any of the people engage in a conversation, or we're just going to keep?
Yeah, if anybody wants to join in the conversation, let us know. You want to add on, you want to debate a point, hit me up, especially on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, send me an email at lordabba@gmail.com, and we'll go from there. But I want to get into this next part if nobody else is going to speak to the reconstruction part, because we kind of went in on the other elements. I think that I just want to say that we are fighting anti-reparationists, and we are the reparationists.
Come on now, say that again.
We are the reparationists in the same way that we were abolitionists back in those days, and we had to fight against the anti-abolitionists Today, we are the reparationists. And we have to fight against the anti-reparationists. So when I look at Brother Chance's tweet, Chance the Rapper's tweet, he and Nick Cannon and all of the rest of these brothers and sisters and Ice Cube, and as the clamor for reparation grows, we need to know, is this the hill that you are willing to die on? Because who's going to cut you off the platform for pushing reparations incessantly? This is what we need right now. We need for the people in that space, if they're going to speak, if they're going to open their mouths, we need for them to be on reparations, because if you are not for reparations, you are against reparations. You are one of those anti-maskers that had the MAGA hats on and the Trump shirts. You are with those people. You can never be for us if you're against it. And you can't say, I'm for reparations, but just not cash payments, only land. Or I'm for reparations, but we have to stop begging the government for stuff at some point. If you're not full-throated in this push for reparations, then you are an anti-reparationist.
Right.
You are an enemy to the cause. And we may be a minority now. We may be, but we're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep teaching so that the people will know. And it's all right if you're a Republican. Just be a reparationist.
There you go. There you go. Talk to him.
Be a reparationist Democrat.
That's right.
Independent. Be a reparationist. This is the most important time of our lives right now, because we have no other way to close the racial wealth gap and to catch up. And there is a group of people that would rather see us at the bottom and remain there. This is what Schumer's $350 billion bill is about. We got to stop this reparations talk. We got to start throwing this money at stuff so we can say, oh, we did this and we did that. No, that may have worked 10, 20, and 30 years ago. That will not work today. Reparations or nothing, period.
So what you saying? Hold up. So that was the most powerful thing that I heard in a long time. In a long time.
That's the most powerful thing I've ever heard.
Yo, that right there, I believe, can change American politics. That one phrase right there, that one term. So what you're saying is, I don't care if you're we don't need to, black folks don't need to be, ADOS people don't need to be a liberal. We don't need to be a conservative. We don't need to be a libertarian. We don't need to be a progressive. We need to be a reparationist, period. Is that what you're saying?
Basically.
Yo, that's fire right there. So everybody else,
one of my brothers, man, he said he's been following our shows and stuff, and he called me up, and I think, he was like, yo, what y'all saying is crazy, man. He said it seemed like this is the right time for this too. I'm like, wow. This is somebody who was never, as far as I know, he's never expressed any interest in reparations to me, but he did. And don't get it twisted. He's a homeowner. He has a really good job and everything, but he's like, yo, this seems like this is the right time. I'm like, yeah, it seems different, doesn't it? He's like, yeah, everything seems different. So a lot of people are feeling it.
And so you're saying, like, okay, if you want to, for everybody else, it's not just ADOS people, not just ADOS politicians, but just like back in the day, it was white abolitionists.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it was white abolitionists, and they moved the needle. That's because they moved the needle in the federal government at that time, putting pressure for legislation and putting pressure for emancipation.
That's right.
So what you're saying is, where are our white abolitionists today? And the abolitionists of today needs to be a white reparationist.
That's
Come on now. And that's lineage based too. Because your great grandparents was abolitionists.
That's
so
right.
don't disrespect your lineage and be an anti-reparationist today. Get on the, because being an anti-reparations today is equivalent to being an anti-abolitionist in yesterday. So our political rooting is tied in. So we know, so now we know what our political identity is. We are American descendants of slavery. So we know that our national agenda has to be reparations, which makes us reparationists. So we are American descendants of slavery, reparationists. So your political ideology has to be rooted in reparations nationally.
And so from here on, if you're not declaring yourself a reparationist, you finish.
You're done.
What it is. If you're not about being a reparationist, you finish. Finish.
So let's reiterate real quick. I'm not a progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a centrist.
Mm-hmm.
What's there's a couple more.
I'm not a moderate.
A moderate.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I am a reparationist.
Yes.
I think that this is a part of, as we move with this new phase of Reconstruction.
Yeah.
There's another element I want to add too, and y'all tell me what y'all think about this, because there was something that came with Reconstruction. And what came with Reconstruction was 3 amendments, the 13th, 14th, amendments. In this new era of time now, I am of the opinion that we need a new amendment, one that strips the powers from the 10th Amendment insofar as states are allowed to use their individual powers only as mere subsidiaries of the United States of America to somehow obviate provisions in our Constitution. Basically, coming from the formation and foundation of that document dealing with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So not only do we need reparations, we need a new amendment, something that's broad, of course, but something that has included within it an element, a section that strips the states of their powers to some degree, because in Georgia, Governor Kemp stole this election. They had so many people removed from the voting rolls. This election that just passed, Raffensperger, whatever his name, I can't even say his name, the new Secretary of State, he made everything so difficult that our people were standing in lines what appeared to be a mile long just to go vote. Like this push has to be so broad right now in this new phase of Reconstruction. And I'm just happy to be here. I feel the spirit of my ADOS ancestors moving through me. I wake up with goosebumps some days thinking about we are going to see this thing done in our lifetimes, and that's a fact.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
My bad, Ali. Go ahead, brother.
Nah, I was just amening him. That's all.
We did say that we were going to talk about how the reparations plan was going to be paid.
Hold on, before you say that, Abba made me think of something when he was saying what came with Reconstruction. What came with Reconstruction was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, what you were getting at, but you said Reconstruction amendments come with Reconstruction, right? Because you have to amend some things. What also came with Reconstruction was states having to call for a state constitutional convention and redo those state constitutions that were soaked in so much. Look at North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, all the southern states. They still are saturated with so much racism and so much Confederate language that if we're in a new Reconstruction era, we're gonna have to do it all the way. We're gonna have to do reparations for American descendants of slavery. We're gonna have to do some Reconstruction amendments. We're gonna have to do some state constitutional conventions and fix a lot of the stuff at the state constitutional level that is keeping our people locked out of state government and state democracy, being able to access democracy in the states that we live in, because we're still a federalist country and we have regional government. And if the federal, and like what Abba's talking to with these, speaking to with these new Reconstruction amendments, we have to address that problem that has always been a thorn in our side, that whenever we get something done at the federal level, the states come and cut our legs out. No matter what it was, when it was Civil Rights Act, the state said, so what? We're going to make you suffer anyway. When it was the Voting Rights Act, the state said, we're going to make you suffer anyway. No matter what it is that happens at the federal level, the states want to continue to buck. So we need some Reconstruction amendments, and we have to have the democracy addressed.
That's right.
The democracy access to democracy and actual representation on the state level. If we I think we spelled it out. We're in a new Reconstruction era, and we have to get at those things, people.
Yeah, I seen somebody put in the chat. You got to make sure you say it's an ADOS. You're an ADOS reparationist. I think it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but the criteria is the criteria. You're going to have to be able to show. You're going to have to be able to show that you have an ancestor that was enslaved, and I think they already even amended that to say, you got to be having ancestors on both sides or something like that. I don't remember. Please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And then you need to, it needs to be a lineage qualification and an identity qualification. So you're going to have identified as Black, and you're going to have to show your ancestors come from slavery. So
let me speak to that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Did you finish making your point?
Yeah.
I just want to say this. Of course, I'm an ADOS reparationist, right? But there should be white reparationists that feel that we need to be made whole.
There has to be,
reparationists that say, you know what, I'm with them. There's a group of Jews right now pushing for reparations. So those are Jewish reparationists. So I don't think that we're, trying to step around that ADOS term at all. We're saying we're ADOS. We're not getting around that at all. We're just saying politically in this space, because of our advocacy, in the same way that we were abolitionists back in the days, we have to be reparationists today.
And reparations is something that we need the nation to get behind. And reparations is always going, and the reparations don't get it confused. It's for ADOS, period. Right. Reparations is sticking to the criteria Dr. Darity, Tone, and Yvette, and every one of the ADOS leadership has outlined. The recipients will never change, but this is the whole thing about, we don't have to be selfish. Just because you're not going to receive the reparations don't mean you can't promote justice. Come on, we're talking about liberty and justice for all. So in the spirit of true Americanism, anyone who believes in justice can be a reparationist. If you believe in justice and believe in righting historical atrocities and historical wrongs, you can be a reparationist. Just don't think you're going to get the reparations. The reparations is specific for ADOS, period.
Let me tell you, we don't get reparations in America. It's going to be some problems. It's going to be some serious. America got problems now. But what you're seeing is because we never got reparations. What people don't want to admit is that fact right there. What you're seeing with disproportionate deaths for ADOS dealing with COVID, what you're seeing with protests in the street, with murders with impunity on camera from unarmed Black men, ADOS men, it's because we never got reparations. It's because we were never made from being the bottom caste of society. That's what it's from. That's what it boils down to.
That's right.
And we have to lead that, right? Because that's a very, if this, that we don't want to have that being a national attitude that it don't include me, then I'm not with that. Just like the nation got behind same-sex marriage and everyone was championing and rooting for that and celebrating that, and that didn't apply to every American. every American can get behind reparations for American descendants of slavery, and that don't have to apply to every American. So we're about national issues that are rooted in justice. And if you're an American, you should be believing in liberty and what? Justice for all, right? So until the people who have been denied justice for the longest time in this country get justice, then there is really no justice in America. So if you're an American and you believe in justice, you should be a reparationist, period.
That's right. All right, now, did y'all want to get to the last leg of the discussion about reparations?
Yes.
My father is watching right now. Shout out to my pops, the God of law forever.
Forever God, what's up?
He had asked a question way back before I cut the Facebook stream off about how will reparations get paid. So what I want to do is I want to go to the article that I brought up on one of the other shows. Which show I cannot remember which one it was, but this article was a great article because it gave us the blueprint of how we get reparations. And in reading Daraty's work, Dr. Daraty's works right now, the works that he co-authored with Kirsten Mullins. Let me say that.
Shout out to the wife. Shout out to Mrs.
You
Derek. Shout out to the wife.
Brother Daraty, his props, but we failed to mention his wife that helped him write that book. So I would definitely want to give a shout out to them both. And I want to share this. This is how the government pulls coronavirus relief money out of thin air. This was a New York Times article that I read on one of the shows last month. It says, once fringe ideas in economic theory are now nearly official policy as government borrowings surge. Let me read that again. Once fringe ideas in economic theory are now nearly official policy as government borrowing surges and the Federal Reserve signals it could buy unlimited debt. And they give the breakdown of how they give in this article is crazy. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get through this. I'm not gonna read this whole thing. I'm gonna skim through it and I'm gonna let my brothers go in on this. So I'm gonna start. The United States has responded to the economic havoc wrought by the coronavirus with the biggest relief package in its history, $2 trillion. It essentially replaces a few months of American economic activity with the flood of government money, every penny of it borrowed. And where is all that cash coming from? Mostly out of thin air. The traditional view of economic theory holds that governments and central banks have distinct responsibilities. A government sets fiscal policy, spending the money it raises through taxes and borrowing to run a country. And the central bank uses various levers of monetary policy, like buying and selling government securities to change the amount of money in circulation to ensure the smooth operation of the country's economy. But the relief package called the CARES Act will require the government to vastly expand its debt at the same time that the Federal Reserve has signaled its willingness to buy an essentially unlimited amount of government debt. With those twin moves, the United States has effectively undone decades of conventional wisdom, embedding into policy ideas that were once regulated to the fringes of economics. It's an epic moment in terms of breaking down the orthodoxy of church and state separation of the fiscal and monetary authority, said Paul McCulley, a former chief economist of PIMCO, a giant asset management shop. Now, there's one part I wanted to get to. Okay, well, playing out in the background of this shift is a debate over what is known as modern monetary theory, which says countries that control their own currency can run much larger budget deficits than they typically do, in part because of the power of central banks to create new money to help finance the shortfall. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the end of this article where it says this. It says, What this crisis has brought to the forefront is that this isn't an academic debate anymore whatsoever, he said. Mr. McCulley said the speed with which the crisis took hold and the unique circumstances of a nearly nationwide lockdown of consumers meant political leaders had little choice but to vastly expand deficits. And he said those who usually question how deficits will be paid for have been rendered mute. I want to reiterate that part. He said those who usually question how deficits will be paid for have been rendered mute. And logic is going to bring up one of those people in a video, and it ends by saying this: how do we pay for it? Mr. McCulley said, we print the damn money. Period.
Simple as that. Simple as that. Where L? You got that video? You should play that video right now.
All right, you want it now? But let me frame that video real quick, right? Because the article basically explained the situation, but let's frame why that article was read. So obviously, when we're on Twitter and we're doing battle and we're promoting it, the main opposition that a reparationist is going to have to know how to defend is people are going to come with that old, conventional, outdated, draconian idea of, well, I wasn't here, my tax dollars, because they still connected to this idea that federal spending is associated with taxation. Mm-hmm. Understand this, right? And I'm going to play a video in a short second from the former chair of the Federal Reserve, and he's going to reaffirm what I'm about to tell you now. The U.S. Treasury and the federal government does not fund budgets, nor is it tied to taxation in regards to spending. When the government creates its budget and spends money, it's done before taxation is collected, right?
That's right.
Taxation is a way to take money, currency that has been issued through the public, back out of circulation for offsetting purposes such as inflation and other reasons, right? So only states and localities and municipalities, cities, towns, states, counties, so on and so forth, are confined to taxation in regards to how they fund their budgets and how they allocate funds with their fiscal policy in the states, right? But the United States government has this thing called the Federal Reserve. It's a currency issuer. So when we think about the Federal Reserve, we can't think of it as like a business or even a home where we are currency users. We're not currency creators. So we take out loans from a outside entity, another party. So when that debt gets called in, we have to find that currency, collect that currency, save that currency, earn that currency to pay it back. But if you are a currency issuer and you print your own currency, you're not in that situation. That's you right. Have no one to pay back but yourself. So I got a graph I'm going to show, but let's talk. Let's listen to the former chair, Alan Greenspan, on what I just said. Right. Let me cue this up real quick. My apologies for not having it ready.
And it's so funny because that article, that New York Times article, is speaking to the very person that Alan Greenspan is responding to, and that's Paul Ryan. He's always this deficit hawk. He don't add to the budget. Don't do the Trump.
He was the main one to add it.
Yeah,
and do the budget up.
Yeah, see that's a Republican tactic, right? Not only Republicans, but Democrats are fond of this whole doom and gloom taxation, fiscal cliff, the sequester, these budget problems. They always do this because they are bought and paid for by private interests and corporate interests, right? And we have seen time and time again of corporations have no problem getting bailouts. During 2008 through 2009, Bernanke, then the chair of the Fed, was able to issue out $1 trillion, and according to the Economic Institute, they said it ended up being all the way to $29 trillion that the Fed issued. They issued it. They did not take it and collect it through taxation, and it did not affect inflation whatsoever. And that's 29 trillion. People understand that, right? So let's listen to the former chair Alan Greenspan talk to Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is asking him a question based upon Social Security. It's the same concept, but he's talking about a different subject matter, a different funding purpose, which is Social Security, and he's trying to allude to these doom and gloom taxation and funding problems that really are made up and don't really exist. Let's check it out.
So having personal retirement accounts is another way of making a future retiree benefits more secure for their retirement. And also, do you believe that personal retirement accounts as a component to a system of solvency does help improve solvency? Because when you have a personal retirement account policy, it's accompanied with a benefit offset. With that feature in place, do you believe that personal retirement accounts can help us achieve solvency for the system and make those future retiree benefits more secure?
Well, I wouldn't say that the pay-as-you-go benefits are insecure in the sense that there's nothing to prevent the federal government from creating as much money as it wants and paying it to somebody. The question is, how do you set up a system which assures that the real assets are created, which those benefits are employed to purchase? So it's not a question of security. It's a question of the structure of a financial system which assures that the real resources are created for retirement as distinct from the cash. The cash itself is nice to have, but it's got to be in the context of the real resources being created at the time those benefits are paid, so that you can purchase real resources with the benefits, which of course are cash.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so all right, so understanding that, let's explain what Alan Greenspan said in response to Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is asking these doom gloom questions about, we're gonna run out of money, and this whole idea that the federal government can be broke or that we can run out of money is equivalent to saying that we can run out of numbers, right? So understand let's talk about it real quick. So what Alan Greenspan just said was the currency itself is not the issue. It only becomes an issue when there's no real assets to purchase with the currency. So understand, he's talking about raw resources and production. So we're not dealing with we're not experiencing a food shortage. We're not experiencing a shortage in housing or a land shortage. The government owns 600+ million acres of land. We're not dealing with a land shortage. We're not dealing with a food shortage. We're not really dealing with a production shortage. So we don't have a problem with the raw assets for purchase. So their concern is putting so much currency into circulation that it will affect inflation and superinflation. So we have to understand that superinflation only happens when you hit about 50%, right? We are nowhere near those levels, people. We have never been near those levels. So, and not to go all the way into Econ 101 and 102, just understand that as long as we have enough resources and things, so in layman's terms, as long as you have enough stuff to buy, you can print all the currency you need.
Right. That's right. That's right. And it's not like reparations is, it's not like we're going to take the money and run. It's just going to be cash infusions into the system. So not paying us reparations is a choice that they are doing because they got to keep us at the bottom. They want to keep us a consumer class. I mean, if we got our reparations and 10 of us got together and said, we're going to produce our own sneakers, No more Nike, no more Reebok, no more Adidas. We're going to produce this. We're gonna, like, you got people that are invested in a lot of these companies. We have politicians invested in these companies. I mean, for them to keeping us a consumer-based group, and I showed this on the last show with the myth of buying power, Jared Bell's article, and he showed that it's a myth, it's a lie that we have this great buying power that rivals that of small nations, when in fact this is a ploy that's used to target our people to drain what little bit of money that we have. So reparations, in a sense, helps us insofar as plugging into the main economy. It might take away from some private businesses as we start to form our own, and that may be some of their fears. I'm pretty certain that some of these guys have looked at this thing at a real level and seen the pluses and the negatives of reparations insofar as their personal finances and investments, etc., are concerned. But at the end of the day, they can print the money up, they can do cash payments, and we can live like American citizens for once.
And it will have nothing to do with European Americans' tax dollars.
That's right.
There you go. It's not, you're not going to pay for anything. Congress is going to direct. This is why I read it earlier. Darity said that our reparations efforts need the invoice needs to be directed specifically to Congress, because through an act of Congress, they can direct the Fed to fund this, because Congress creates a budget, which through the appropriations, the various appropriations committee, and you got to get Darity's book, because Darity is outlined it's the John Madden playbook for reparations. If you're a reparationist, you have to have From Here to Equality by Dr. Darity and Kristen Mullen. So what they're saying is that he's talking about a lot of things in there. The Bureau, what is it? The National Reparations Bureau. Right. And it's so much that goes into it. You have to get it. I can't talk about all the pages in the book on one show, but you have to understand that. And it's so no one can use that argument. My tax, I didn't own no slaves. My tax dollars ain't gonna go to no to nothing, to no reparations. It has nothing to do with your tax dollars. And that's why we have to stay away from state-based reparation claims, because that's all it is. It's a claim. That's not reparations, right? And state funding is tied. Remember this, family. State funding and state budgets are directly tied to taxation. Federal spending and federal budgets are not.
Brother Nick makes an excellent point. You muted, Josh, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me just read Brother Nick's comment real quick. He said, we need our monies for lost wages, stolen land, and all of our accrued disadvantage. And I mean, there's so many ways that we could have this argument, and just dealing with lost wages alone, this is why all we need is just land argument doesn't work. And Brother Logic was breaking that down to us early when we were on the phone. It just doesn't make any sense, because having land is not going to make up for generations of lost wages, period.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I wanted to just read, well, I won't read it, but just break down like the chart. I'm not even gonna show you the chart. I just want to tell you, like, you know, but it's always been like the sky is falling scenario. Or, look, it is this many billions, the deficit is this many billions, and this many trades. And it just goes higher and higher and higher and higher. I don't even know what the exact number is now. If anybody has it, you can share it. But you notice how, like, nobody ever paints the picture of how we're going to default, like when this thing is just going to collapse, because it can't, because we just print the money. Like, and what you do is this is another thing people don't understand, right? What did George Bush do? George Bush, one of the first things he did that was landmark, and what Republicans usually like to do when they get in office, is they slash taxes. Taxes is supposed to be the revenue that fuels the government, right? We're supposed to do policy based on that's what we're told. That's how they paint the picture. That's how they fund the budget, is via tax revenue. But when the economy crashed in 2008 and they had to bail out the banks and all that kind of stuff, that was a huge outlay of spending via the Treasury, via Federal Reserve, right? Mm-hmm. An environment where revenue was reduced because he cut taxes. All right, now let's go to Trump. What was one of the first things Trump made sure he did? He cut taxes. He did the taxes for the wealthy. And now, a few years behind that, we're having to run trillions of dollars from the U.S. Treasury in spending, increasing the deficit. In either scenario, did they have to raise taxes before they ran them trillions? No, they had already cut taxes. They had cut revenue. So that shows you right there that it's not about raising money before they spend the money. They understand it's an acronym. And I believe the lady's name is Stephanie Kelton. I think that's her name. She wrote the book called The Deficit Myth. I'm reading it right now. But she put an acronym in this book. It's called STAB, S-T-A-B, STAB. Spend, then you tax and borrow to make up, like our brother Dr. Logic said, to make up for something that may happen as a result of like getting inflation, That's on the federal level. You spend the money first. You issue the currency, you put it in circulation, then you tax and borrow to prevent the adverse effects from increasing the supply of money. And I don't want to get too deep into economics, but increasing the supply of money in the market. So in the state, because they can't issue the currency, they have to tax and borrow to raise the money to then spend the money. So what we're trying to paint the picture is stop letting them use excuses about why they can't pay reparations. They can do it today. They can do reparations today. They can give us $1 trillion to $2 trillion a year in the Treasury outlay right now. Like they can do that with no problem. It wouldn't default America. It wouldn't hurt the economy. It wouldn't cause
not at all.
Inflation. Not at all. They could do it right now. They just don't have the political will. And the reason why they don't have the political will is because it's not enough reparationists here.
Don't have enough reparationists.
That's it. Moving forward, I believe you have to be declaring yourself as a reparationist Democrat.
That's right.
If you're not a reparationist, you don't need to. What are we voting for you for?
That's right.
That's right, man. Yep.
I just want to show something. Like if you could pull up what I got in the screen share. Let's look at this, right? Understand this anyway, because they always talk about the debt. Understand where the debt is actually at and what debt actually is. In all reality, the debt should not even, this term debt is misleading. It shouldn't even be debt. It should say the national savings, because that's what it really is. It's a savings account. It's not debt, because we're going to talk about who the debt is owed to in this pie chart right here. The dark blue is the debt that the U.S. government owes itself. The U.S. government itself owns 35.5% of the national debt.
And a large piece of that is Social Security fund. So
all of that is wrapped up into like Social Security. It's wrapped up into public aid, Medicaid. Those are the big three, and defense spending, right? DOD, right? Now, the second largest owners of the debt are, guess who? The U.S. citizens. So if a debt gets called in, who you think they're gonna have to give the money to? Who can call in the debt? The U.S. government has. Look at this. Look at that. They can call in their own debt. That doesn't really make sense, right? What are you gonna do? Take money from your left pocket and put it into your right pocket? That doesn't make sense. But guess who can call in debts? Who has the greatest claim for debt? This group right here, the United States citizens. And reparations is what, folks? All our educated ADOSers know. Reparations is the oldest debt in the history of the country.
Debt in the United States of America.
So we are the largest holders of the debt of America, period.
Exactly. So now look at this. So then people talk about, well, China owns America. Look at China only has 8.1% of the national debt. And guess what? I'm gonna explain it in two ways so you can never bring this up again. So I don't want y'all to, I don't like looking silly, and I don't want my people to look silly. What China actually has is a savings account with the American government. This isn't like something that they can show up on the White House lawn and say, we want our 8.1%. That's never going to happen, okay? What they do is they like to have American currency because of its position in the world, in the global monetary system. So in exchange for goods, they take American currency because it's the most usable currency in the entire world. So they like having that currency. But what it does is it sits into it gets bonded. It's put into a bond account similar to the US debt, right? It gets put into a bond account, which is essentially a savings account, and it accrues interest, right? So when it matures, it gets transformed back into a checkings account so that currency can be issued. That's all it is, folks. We're not dealing with no like they see. So the greedy corporate Americans and the greedy corporate and private groups, they know this. That's why they can get the bailouts whenever they want. But they don't want the people. They don't want there to be a people's economy. And they don't want an economy that works for the people because they know this number. They know if we knew that the government actually owes us 30% of the debt, then we would be asking for it.
That's
right? They don't want us to know this, and they don't want us to understand because they want to have that exclusive elite access to the Federal Reserve. They want to get behind Congress and tell Congress what to do. They want a Congress that works exclusively for corporate America and not for the people. We have to change that through political action and understanding how politics work.
That's right, brother Ali. You wanted to add anything to that?
Nah, I'm my bad, man. I'm like engaging in like different groups and stuff with a bunch of anti-reparationists. So that means I'm like a little distracted, man.
It's all good, brother Josh. You wanted to go in on that?
Nah, man, that's on point. You know.
Yeah, that was like straight to the point. I was sitting here listening like I'm gonna have to go back and watch this part of the show again. Brother Logic was breaking that joint all the way down. But you know, that's what we do here at Be the Power. You know, everybody has their strengths. We feed off of each other. We feed off the ADOS family, man. We are moving in a different.
Nobody was trying to get the link.
Right. No, I don't think they was trying to get the link. But what I want to do for next week is I want to open up the show to the ADOS family, particularly any of the other content creators, so we could just like have an open mic discussion, and we could talk about all things politics, particularly relating to reparations and a lot of what's going on right now with people trying to jump in front of and water down the reparations movement and the reparations wave. So I want to put that out there to the people, some of the content creators. I know I see Sister Cynthia in the chat. Brother Nick, if you want to come on as well, we could host some of the ADOS family and really just have a real broad roundtable discussion. You know, we covered and hit every point tonight, so I want my bros to go in and take us up out of here, brother. I want to start with my brother Ali, of course, and then we're gonna go to Logic, and then we're gonna go to Josh, and then I'm gonna close it out.
Yeah. So, bottom line is, we need to be reparationists. We need to be reparationists, and we need to stomp out all of the anti-reparationists. I think that at this point, there's been so much information disseminated in terms of dispelling a lot of the myths, the misunderstandings, the arguments of the anti-reparationists. That all we need to do is continue to push this information forward to the people who are interested and try to grow this base of support, because we need it, man, and that's where we are. We need it, and we need the people to get on board. You know, I think everybody covered the topics pretty well, in terms of going from Nick Cannon all the way up until how this thing will be paid for, and explaining it. And again, we bring a lot of sources that people can go to and verify the information. So I mean that's very important as well. So I just want to say good job to all of y'all, man. Glad to be
honest to you too, brother. Brother Logic.
Yo. So we ran it down tonight, like we try to do every night, understanding that being the power first starts with the knowledge, because we know knowledge is power. And the more you know, the more you can do. And we want to be recapping everything that we talked about, understanding the con, right? The more informed our electorate is, right? The ADOS electorate, the more informed we are, the more prepared we are to identify the cons, right? The cons are happening. They're very nefarious, wicked cons that are taking place all over the country, but they're being able to be executed because of the lack of knowledge that we have, the lack of political maturity that we have, and we can't identify them for what they actually are. So that's what Be the Power is a part of. But that education process, that voter education, that civic education, and that understanding, right? That policy education. And what Be the Power is also dedicated to is understanding where the power is. And that's in political action. That's in knowing your politics, knowing what you need to be rooted in, and actually being like Brother Naheem closes us out with, and you'll hear it again tonight. You have to become the power. So we're talking about a new movement. We can't expect the same old congressional bodies to legislate new legislation for us. We have to replace them. We need new legislators on every level, local, state, and federal. But most importantly, we need new federal legislatures. Where's your self-confidence? Why you can't be a United States senator? Why you can't be a United States congressman? Right. Why can't it be you? Why do you think you have to lean on someone else? Understand that it can be you, and you can represent your people. You can write the laws. Who better else than an ADOS reparationist to write reparationist legislation? Woo! Why not you? Right? We don't have to vote for somebody else. We need to raise one from among ourselves. You understand? And in order to really be prepared, you have to get into From Here to Equality. It's not just a book. It's really, if you look at what it's doing and repairing our ancestral damage, this book and how it is written, I cannot stress to you enough how important it is.
You got to get the book.
This book is divinely prepared. And what's in the book is divine instructions for us to remedy a historical evil that has been visited upon our people, right? So I don't like to speak in like these type of preacher type language, but I have to make it plain. This is what it is. You understand? If we want to get this thing done, we have to do it right. And it has to be us. We have to be the drivers. Now, how are you going to be the driver if you're in the passenger seat or you ain't even in the damn car in the first place? In order to be the driver, you have to have your hands on the wheel. That means we have to have the pen in our hands writing the legislation. You understand? That way, we don't have to worry about the con artists because we're going to vote them out of office. The power of your vote is the most powerful thing that you got in a democratic society based on representation. In a democratic republic, your vote is the most powerful thing you have. You understand? So understand that. That being said, we have to start pushing voter registration. We have to understand in order to be the power and become the power, we have to put ourselves in the driver's seat. So you know how we get down. I am a reparationist. I know Josh is a reparationist. I know Ali's a reparationist. Y'all know Naheem's a reparationist, but are you a reparationist? That's what you gotta ask yourself. Peace.
Peace. Woo. Woo. How you want to come behind that, Josh?
I knew it was a setup. As soon as you put me behind him.
I ain't mean to do it. Like, I'd have let him go. Let him go after you if I know he was gonna go in like that.
Man.
Oh, man, I didn't. I just was talking from the heart.
No doubt, brother.
All right. So I ain't got much to say. I just want to say, just piggybacking off of that. All of us have a platform. Whether you look like just, you look at your situation, you might have just 15 followers on Twitter or whatever the case may be. Use your platform. Use your platform. I don't care if it's at the church, in the temple, if it's at the mosque, if your platform is at your job, or if you're a teacher, if you're part of some type of organization. Use your platform to exercise this power of this knowledge that you're getting, and to advocate for you and your people as a reparationist. Use whatever platform you have. Build up your platform, and guess what? Your power and your knowledge and your influence is going to grow as you get more educated in this, and as people start to hear what you're saying, and you start to influence them. You're going to grow. Your voice is going to grow, and we need strong voices that are reparationists to move the masses of people to where we need to get to. But that being said, I know I am a reparationist. I don't know about you. I'm a reparationist.
Facts.
Peace.
Hey, family, I knew that this was going to be a powerful discussion tonight. The energy that we had among ourselves let me know that this discussion was going to be very powerful. And it's one of those shows one of those presentations that you could send to someone that's seeking to understand reparations in some more plainer terms. That's one of the things we try to do here. I got a lot of people from the streets that's watching the channel, so I try my best to speak in the plainest terms possible. And I think that we are at a point where in our lifetimes we're gonna see the change that we hoped for growing up. There was a question I used to ask myself: why is this happening to us? I was 5%er, and I would say, how am I God and I can't change this? And if there's a God, why would he let this happen to us? Why? Like, I would ask myself these why questions all of the time, and I received no answers. I just received more of the same. But it was those whys that fueled me to push, to become the power. I remember at least the age of 12 watching politicians come to our neighborhoods making promises about this and promises about that, and nothing ever changing. And when I got older and got a better understanding of politics, when I got into the teachings of Noble Drew Ali, the real Moorish teachings, not that fake Moor stuff, I really wanted to get into the political push. This is how me and Logic links up, and we've been rocking out ever since, right? And this is how my brothers and I, all of us, really link up. But on the political tip, this is how Logic and I link up. And here we are now. We are in a position that I don't think we've ever been in before, because it's not just us anymore. We have large swaths of European Americans, as I call them, quote unquote white people, who are also on board for a change. But most of them, they're not really feeling this reparations thing. And that's where this reparationist movement and its education becomes vital, because the more we educate them, the more they begin to understand that although you say you're not a racist, the position that you hold that we shouldn't receive reparations stems from racism and anti-abolitionists way back when. And I think that what we're doing with our show, with Breaking Brown, with Tone Talks, and the other ADOS content creators, and even those voices, even when they're wrong or on the numbers like a Bob Johnson, right? I think that this push is going to cause reparations to happen in our lifetimes. And now we have to become the politicians now. It's our time. Those of you who are listening right now, think about how much different things would be if we sat in the halls of the legislature. As our brother Logic so eloquently put it, if we controlled the pen, if we drove the cars, not just the cars, but the 18-wheelers, not just the 18-wheelers, Air Force One, not just driving or piloting rather Air Force One, but maybe possibly kicking our feet up in the back of that joint, right? So I just want to close out by saying, the motto of the show, and that is, don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you be able to make a change. And with that, I say peace.